Have you had a wheel fall off your RV?
This week on the StressLess Camping RV Podcast, we speak with Rich Luhr, co-editor of Airstream Life magazine and co-owner of airgear.store.
Rich helps us avoid this potential disaster that is not as uncommon as you might think.
Yikes. We have this week's podcast along with notes and all the stories to go with this episode, and discounts, deals, helpful tips, and more at our home on the web at StressLessCamping.com.
Don't forget to like and share, and thank you for joining us on our weekly RV podcast adventure.
I'm Peggy.
And I'm Tony.
And we are two RV industry veterans who travel part-time
in a small trailer,
looking to share big adventures and help you with great tips,
tricks,
and discounts.
I'm not so sure we're going to be able to say that
small
much
trailer.
Money. Yeah. More on that. More on that.
I think
coming up.
I think anything under 30 is small.
All right. Then we qualify still. And that there's your sneak preview of
peek.
Something coming, like a freight train down the track. Well, we are listeners to a lot of podcasts. I'm sure you are too. And one of the ones we really like is Clark Howard. And Clark Howard does a lot of sort of life advice, financial advice, just how to manage your finances. But another thing he does, he has this whole resource. Yeah, resource
Which
center.
Is probably very well researched.
It probably is, because he's got a whole team. Anyway.
This week, or last week, on the 17th of October, he talked about remote work.
Yeah.
And so we will put a link to his episode about remote work, but also that episode links to another link that we will add. So if you want to go directly there and not listen to a podcast, but you should, you can read an article about finding those remote jobs.
Yeah. And, there's so many scams out there. That's another thing he kind of helps you avoid is scams. So many scams out there on remote work and just a bunch of malarkey. And so it's a good resource that's vetted. And, if you're looking to work from the road, maybe this is a helpful hint.
Yep.
Who knows?
Hey, you know how we always talk about upfits?
Yeah, from our friends at ABC Upfitters.
And we didn't have an upfit. We actually have a factory included the power package.
Right, it was designed and developed by ABC Upfitters and is basically the same system you can get from them as a aftermarket upfit. They provide a lot of these kits to the RV industry, including to Rockwood and companies like Thor Motor Coach and all that. But they will also install systems in your RV, whatever that happens to be. And turns out we're going to be one of their customers in about a month.
So that might be another little tiny hint as to what's coming up in our lives in the next month or two. But before that, we actually have 2 boondocking trips.
Yeah, even though it's going to be, late October, early November, we're still going.
Yep.
Fall camping is something we really like.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll be using that. We'll be using our power package you can't use it up. But we're going to get the most use out of it that we can before we take it back to Indiana and our next chapter begins.
Yeah. And that's a very valid point. You said you can't use it up. That's a nice thing. These systems have many thousands of cycles built into them. So unlike the typical RV battery, these very safe lithium systems have thousands of cycles built into them. We were just talking with somebody who was one of the first customers of ABC Upfitters and went back and had more stuff added.
Right.
Bill. And they tested his battery because it logs how many complete discharges. And he's barely scratched the surface. So these systems can last as long, basically, as you can last as an RVer. So if you want a custom tailored system that is right for you, that fits within the way you like to RV, whether that's just a simple battery upgrade or a complete system, our friends at ABC Upfitters are the people that we really trust. They listen, they do great work, and we've been very pleased with them. So you can reach them at 574-333-3225.
That's 574-333-3225, or check them out at abcupfitters.com.
We follow a lot of other RVers also, including Rich Luhr from Air Gear or Airstream Life. He is an avid Airstreamer, but he also has a blog about the RV lifestyle, not dissimilar to StressLess Camping. And he literally had a wheel fly off his trailer.
Yeah, while he was on the highway. So he wrote an article about it. He sent it out to us, and I said, hey, we want to hear more.
We don't want your wheels falling off your RVs.
We want to help our listeners avoid that. So we asked Rich Luhr, and he came and talked to us, and let's hear what he has to say.
Indeed, dude. Well, we have the privilege of having our friend Rich Luhr here, and Rich is the co-publisher of Airstream Life and also the co-owner of the Air Gear store, which a lot of you have supported through StressLess Camping. So, Rich, thanks for coming back.
Oh, it's always my pleasure. I love chatting with you guys. You're one of the more informative podcasts out there.
Oh, thank you. Well, you and I kind of had a similar experience. We both went to not at the same time, but we both learned something from Dexter Axel that really surprised me and made me happy that I have the tools that I have. You want to share that with us?
Well, I think what you're talking about is I know I've had, and you've probably had the experience of a real tire and wheel disaster where you're on the road and something awful happens involving your wheel. In my case, the lug nuts, the lug studs that the nuts screw onto, broke off, and the wheel went flying away, never to be seen again. And
Yikes.
yeah, it was quite a disaster. I was going down a steep grade in Idaho, and I'll never forget it. Just all of a sudden, there was this weird noise, and in the side view mirror, I saw this flash of black and silver, and I thought, what was that?
Of course, it's going to happen in the worst. It's not like on a flat 30-mile-an-hour empty road.
Yeah.
Yeah, as your wheel passes you on the highway, you're like, oh, look, somebody's wheel. Uh-oh.
Well, in my case, there was that initial flash, and I'm thinking, what was that? And then somebody passes me and starts waving frantically, that whole routine. And yeah, so.
And the photos that you shared, that's from your Airstream, right?
Yeah, there's a photo that I shared of it's actually a disc brake in that particular case, but you can see that 5 of the 6 lug bolts are just completely snapped off at the base, and there's only one left there. And
the surprising thing is this is not at all uncommon.
No, it's one of the big problems, and one of the things that people don't talk about because people just don't understand the importance of getting that wheel seated properly with the correct torque on the lug nuts. That's really all there is to it, and yet it's such a weird mystery to so many people, myself included.
It's so simple.
Yeah. Well, so what we're talking about is the lug nuts, which are the nuts that hold the wheel to the axle or rim of the trailer. On aluminum wheels. Those can back out because the aluminum wheel is actually more rigid than the steel wheel, and it may not seat properly, and over a short period of time they can actually back out and the wheel literally falls off, as it did in your case.
Yeah, actually, mine was worse. So there's 2 failure modes. I mean, you described one of them pretty well. If the lug nuts aren't tightened properly, they can back off, and that's one failure mode. The other failure mode is what happened to me, where a well-meaning mechanic with an air wrench went and tightened the lug nuts for me He said, "Oh, let me just check these." And that their air wrench puts out way too much torque for those nuts. So they were all torqued to like 200 foot-pounds. And and I didn't know any better. This was early in my days. And so what that did is that stretched the lug stud or the bolt too much. And so the strain of that extra stretching from the overly tight nuts and rolling down the road, the conclusion was inevitable. They just failed. The metal fatigued and they snapped off at the base, and that was the end of that. So there's two failure modes: too tight and too loose. Mine was too tight.
Right.
So what was described to me by the Dexter Axle guy, and it was the same guy that was at the Airstream rally and at the Frog rally.
Bill Snyder.
Yeah, he's a good guy. Mm-hmm. He had said that surprisingly, the lug nuts can, well, of course, if they're over tightened, they won't back off. But if they're normally tightened, that the fact that the aluminum wheel doesn't always seat properly, it can wiggle the nuts loose, and then the wheel just comes flying off.
Mm-hmm. Which is
a bummer.
Yeah.
It's definitely a bad day. So that's why the advice is to check the torque 3 times with a torque wrench. You tighten those bolts, those nuts once, drive 25 miles, check them again, 25 miles, check them again. And after you do it 3 times, at least in theory, the wheel should now be properly seated. And it's true, because I've done this many times, and every time I take the wheel off, I go through this procedure. And the first time and the second time I check those things, inevitably 1 or 2 of them has gotten loose. It takes that long, 75 miles, for them to be really, everything's all kind of seated in where it needs to be.
Yeah, okay. It's over time, if once that's seated properly, it's not something to be as concerned about, but it's still good to have a torque wrench, because the only way to really know how tight the wheel lug nuts are is with a good torque wrench.
Yeah, you can't tell by feel.
Right.
People are, I think they compare it to their car, and their car, they just kind of go, oh, okay, it's tight, good enough, And on cars, there's a lot more tolerance for a lot of reasons. Those bolts aren't under nearly as much stress as they are on a trailer. And so while you can get away with that with a car sometimes, you just can't with a travel trailer. Aluminum or steel wheels, really, you need a torque wrench.
Well, it's amazing to me when you look at when you go over a tight turn and you have 2 axles or even 3, and how the wheels can be almost bent looking.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you imagine the torque that it takes to bend that whole assembly that much.
Yeah, it's kind of scary the first time you see it. You do a tight turn in a parking lot, and then you look at the trailer, and the wheels look like they've been bent. And
right.
You're going, oh no, what happened here?
Just about every gas station, that's
right.
how it is.
Exactly.
You, like, maneuver in, and you look, and you're like, oh gosh, I can't stay here very long. This just doesn't sit well.
So looks bad. Yeah.
And when we set up at a campsite too, if he's had to turn to get into a site, and I go, okay, this is exactly where we want to be, and he's like, no, but I have to go forward and back up because the wheels are funky, and we're not going to leave it like that. Yeah. So then we can't get back in the same spot.
But Tony's need for perfection is satisfied, and I totally sympathize, because I've done that too.
We manage to find another level spot, but it's always, a half an inch different from where I had us in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, and Airstreams and Rockwoods have the same basic torsion axles from Dexter. Mm-hmm. So it's the same experience, but this doesn't matter no matter what axle you have. It's the same. So you have come up with a good solution for this, basically.
Well, I've been singing this song for years because when you buy a new travel trailer, it generally doesn't come with any tools at all for changing the tire. In recent years, Airstream's thrown in a little 4-way wrench thing that's kind of a folding 4-way, which is great. It'll take the lug nuts off, but you still don't have most of the things you need, including a torque wrench. So we've sold for a long time an Air Gear tire changing kit, and it's basically all the tools you need in a bag. So You never have to, you just throw that bag into one of your storage compartments and it's there if you need it. You never have to think about, oh, gee, did I bring the right things? It's always there. But the key thing is the torque wrench, because without that, you're just flying blind. You have no idea if you've gotten those done right. And that's the key, as we've both discovered painfully.
Now, I think it's important to let people know, though, that although it's called air gear, it's not only for Airstreams. This particular tool, there are some, of course, some things in the air gear store that are really specific to Airstream trailers, but this is something that's way more universal.
Yeah, we actually modified the kit. We used to include 2 different sizes of sockets for the 2 common nuts that Airstream used, but we've now broadened it to have 4 different sizes of sockets in there, so it pretty much covers every travel trailer made.
Okay.
You should have a socket in the kit for your travel trailer. So it's a universal kit, or as close as we could possibly get to it. And it's one of those things.
I've used mine for more than checking the lug nuts. Although
sure.
I've used it I've used it when I installed a new hitch. There was a spec on how tight the bolts should be. Mm-hmm. I've used it to take out and put in the anode rod on my water heater.
Oh.
What's the torque spec on an anode rod?
I don't remember. I knew you were going to ask me that. Doggone it. But I've used it for that. Yeah. I've checked the truck torque, the lug nuts on the truck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've used it for a number. So it's a useful thing. And because the torque wrench is, I don't know, what is it, 2.5 feet long or whatever, you get good leverage too.
Yeah, it's probably about 18 inches long. And yeah. I will caution you about one thing, though. The torque wrench should only be used to tighten nuts, but never to loosen them, because that can knock it out of its calibration. So that's why in the kit,
I see.
We also include a solid steel, what we call a breaker bar, and that's for removing nuts, because you won't hurt that by to use it. So you use the breaker bar to remove the nuts, you use the torque wrench to put them back on, get them to spec.
Okay.
See, I learned something today. Hopefully not at the expense of my torque wrench.
It's probably still accurate. Don't worry too much about it. But it's, as a general practice, it's one of those things. You want to take care of your torque wrench. You should always wind it down to close to 0 every time you store it, because if you leave it set at a torque setting, the springs inside are going to develop a set and it won't be accurate. So you always wind it down to 0. And always put it back in its protective plastic case. That keeps it from getting banged around and knocked out of calibration also.
It seems to not want to go back in the case if you don't wind it down anyway.
That's right. It won't fit.
Oh.
It'll be
Which is by design.
Yeah. It gets a little longer when you wind it to torque, so you got to wind it down to 0 to get to fit inside. That's true. Good point.
Which is smart.
kind of idiot proofs it a little bit, and believe me, I've been the idiot, because once in a while I've gone to put it back in the case and I'm like, dang, it won't. I forgot.
Yeah, I'm the guy who gets to test things on whether or not they're idiot proof, because if they're not, I'm the idiot who'll figure it out.
And no, that's actually the biggest part of my day sometimes, is figuring out all the ways people can screw something up and then figuring out how to help them not do that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. So any other tips like that we should share with people?
A couple of things that come up. I remember in Bill's seminar, a lot of these things came up too. First of all, never put anti-seize or any kind of lubricant on the threads of the lug bolts. People think that they should use anti-seize, and actually that's going to screw them up, because that makes the threads slippery and you won't get a good torque rating if you do that. So that torque rating is for dry threads, nothing on them. So if you've put anti-seize on them, you need to clean it off with a good cleaner and get them back to where they were originally. That's a big one that comes up, because people make that mistake a lot. Let's see, put your torque wrench away, right? We covered that. And oh yes, a lot of people think that you have to keep checking the torque like every trip or something like that, and that's really overkill. If you check the torque with your torque wrench, it won't do any harm. But Dexter's advice is that you really, once the wheel is seated, you really only need to do it about every 3,000 miles or so. So it's not a big maintenance item, and it only takes a couple of minutes to do it anyway.
And so in the very beginning, check it often, a few times in the first 100 miles. And then after that, when you know they're well seated, then you can back off and not worry so much.
Exactly.
And just to make sure that I understand torque wrenches properly, the way you can check it is you put the torque that you want it to be, and you kind of pretend like you're tightening it. And if it's at the right torque, it'll just, the torque wrench kind of just, I don't want to say breaks because that sounds bad, but it pops
clicks
loose and doesn't go tighter because that's where it's set to stop.
Well, almost. What it's going to do is when you get to that torque setting, it's going to give you a very abrupt click, big, loud, audible click, and you'll feel it too. And you just stop there. If you keep applying pressure, it will continue to tighten. So it doesn't stop you, but it does alert you. This is the time to stop. And I mean, you can't miss it. It's a big, big physical click that you feel.
I know I've felt it. It's been a long time since I've done the task because that's that's one of Tony's jobs. But but thank you for describing that so that people, when the first time they use it, they know what they're getting into.
There's a really good video that you did too, so we'll put a link to that because that's a very good video on not only using the torque wrench but care, all of that stuff. So we have a link to that. Another thing, since we're talking about retirement,
Oh boy.
I typically check the inflation pressure on my tires before any journey as well. And the time to do that is in the morning when the tires are cold.
Correct.
So that's another huge thing that a lot of people don't do and is a big safety item.
We generally recommend that people get a tire pressure monitoring system. They're $200 to $300 depending on how many wheels you have. Really good investment in my opinion. You can certainly always check the air manually, but the nice thing about the TPMS is, first of all, when you're getting ready to go, you just turn the thing on and it checks all the pressures for you, so you don't have to actually do anything. And secondly, if you have a loss of pressure during the trip, it's going to alert you before that tire completely deflates and shreds and destroys something on your trailer.
Right.
And that's
my favorite ones are also the ones that report the heat.
Yes.
So if something gets really hot, like for example a wheel bearing failing, then you get an alert for that too.
Yeah, I've the TST system that we sell, Truck Systems Technologies, does temperature. I think all the good ones do, and it's alerted me a couple times to a dragging brake situation, which is very important. One day I towed my trailer just across town here in Tucson, maybe 15 miles, and when I pulled into my driveway, the wheels were all running 122 degrees, which was way hotter than they normally run. And so that led me to, do some investigation and find out that I had a faulty brake controller actually that was causing the brakes to drag. So,
interesting. We just got back from a 33-day trip, and we're coming back into New Mexico, and there was a lot of headwinds. And as you said that, it reminded me that I was getting about 6.5 miles to a gallon, which is a lot worse than normal for her. But that could also, you get a dragging brake, and that'll affect your fuel mileage too.
Good point. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of advantages to a TPMS, and I really think that it's just kind of basic insurance for a heavy traveler. So, I recommend it to a lot of people. And by the way, we just came back from a 17-day trip. We were off to Missouri and back, so we got some of those headwinds too, which really sucked. My rule of thumb is, unless I'm on a killer schedule, if my gas mileage drops below 9 miles per gallon, I'm looking for a place to spend the night. I just I hate fighting the truck down the road the whole time.
Oh, yeah.
It's exhausting.
Right.
Yeah, it really is. And that was this, but we had to get back, but we made it. Just a lot of my truck was just really very thirsty.
Yeah.
So I was not happy. Not a happy Tony. And I dropped the speed and everything. It's just bleh.
When there's a 30-knot headwind, what are you going to do? You're going to go down the highway at 40 miles an hour? I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, makes you wish you were going the other direction, though.
Yeah.
We did catch a little bit of that one day, and oh, it was glorious. 17
Nice.
miles per gallon for a while.
Wow. You'd think they'd move the highway so that we'd get more tailwinds.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna rein you guys back in. So I want to talk about the tire changing kit. It has a torque wrench. It has the nuts that pretty much will help every travel trailer user. What else is in that kit?
Let's see. We have a safety vest because, it's really a bad idea to be changing a tire by the side of the road without something to make you visible. And let's see what else. We've got the breaker bar that I mentioned for taking the nuts off. So if they're stubborn, you can put all the force you want on that breaker bar. And we also include instructions, which is really important.
Oh, yes.
If you don't change tires on a regular basis, the day you're going to be stressed out. You pulled off by the side of the road, you got a flat, the dog is barking, your wife is screaming. I don't know what's going on. There's trucks roaring by, 18-wheelers, 3 feet from your head, and you're going, I got to do this now, and you're frazzled, and you haven't done it. So, oh my God, instructions. Just printed instructions with pictures to say, it's going to be okay. This is
Step 1, take a deep breath.
Step 1, have a shot of whiskey. No, don't do that.
Don't do that. But you get it. I've tried to put myself in the position of, I've been in this position. I mean, I remember changing a flat by the side of a busy highway in Cincinnati, and it was awful. Trucks like literally 6 feet from me going 60, 70 miles an hour past me. It's unnerving to be in that situation. And when you don't have a choice, so I think about that when I'm writing these instructions, trying to go, okay, what would I want somebody to say to me? And what picture would I want to have so I don't have to figure this out right now.
So when you had the studs break off, I guess they just had to flatbed the trailer away?
Well, fortunately, I have a tandem, and like your Rockwood, we have a torsion axle. So with a torsion axle, you can actually just tow on 3 wheels, which is what I did.
Oh,
yeah,
like an old Citroen.
Yeah, like an old Citroen. Or
you raise one tire.
One of those. What's that? The Robin in England. Anyway.
Oh, the 3-wheeled thing,
wasn't it? Yeah.
Yep, the Reliant Robin.
That was it.
That would tip over at a slight cross breeze.
So is there a limit to how fast or how far you can do that driving on 3?
Well,
I mean, obviously, you're not just going to finish your 1,500-mile trip and not worry about it. But
well, it's funny because Airstream used to publish in their owner's manual that you shouldn't exceed something like 30 miles per hour if you're towing on 3 wheels. That's really not a scientific number. I think that's just sort of somebody's idea of like, this is what you should do. But out of paranoia, I had to tow, I think, 12 miles back to a tire shop, and I did it at 30 miles an hour, and it was really upsetting because I was causing traffic problems, and it wasn't great. One day I was talking to a guy named Dave Schumann, who used to be the director of service at Airstream years ago, and he said he had a customer call up who had this problem, and he told the customer he could tow on 3 wheels. And the customer, unbeknownst to him, was in someplace like Tennessee and towed it all the way to the Airstream factory in Ohio on 3 wheels at highway speeds.
Gosh.
Because he misunderstood. He thought it was okay. And so he got away with it, 65 miles an hour all the way to Ohio. So who's to say? But personally, I would slow down a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that not only additional stress on the torsion axle that's still touching the ground or the wheel, but also the frame, all of that. It's not good.
And don't forget the other 3 tires. They're now carrying the weight of 4 tires. So as a step, what I would do now, knowing what I know now, I would inflate those other 3 tires to their max cold rating before I started towing, because you want them to have the maximum weight carrying capacity that they can have.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
That's a good point.
Which I was going to say, that's why I always travel with a 12-volt compressor, because you never know when you're going to need it.
Really good point. Yeah.
We do. And then what did we inflate? We inflated air mattresses. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, other crazy stuff that not just
our inflated
tires.
truck topper.
That's it. We have an inflatable truck topper, and we use an inflator for that.
Perfect. Yeah, they're so useful. Things like that. A rivet tool, a torque wrench, an inflator, once you have these things and you carry them around, you find all kinds of uses for them.
Right, right. And hopefully once you have these things and you're super prepared for any kind of disaster, that's when those disasters don't happen. Right? So
It is true. Yeah.
So get your tools and be prepared. Yeah. But then, and if something terrible happens, it takes away that stress of not knowing how far or how fast or, how long you can continue to drive on your problem tire.
I think about my early days, and I used to go wandering around looking for gas stations with tire inflation things, that you put the quarters into. And after a couple of years of that, and of course, you get to the gas station, you can't fit in there, you can't reach the inflator because there's some car in the way. And then the light bulb went on. I'm like, why am I doing this? Why not just put an inflator? So I wasn't born knowing everything about Airstreams. I learned a lot of things through my own stupidity. It's been a long process.
Well, it's just, at some point, your frustration level, you're like, for $100 or whatever it is for an inflator, I can solve this problem. Yeah. And blow up camper shells and air mattresses, too. Right.
Yeah. I think I only spent $30 on mine at Walmart. It's nothing fancy.
Oh, geez.
Nice.
Does the job,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, our whole world we have so much Ryobi stuff that if I can put that Ryobi battery on it, I'm buying one.
Right.
I actually, there's a lot to be said for that, to have that kind of unified system. I'm kind of envious because I've talked to people who have the Ryobi vacuums and they cordless vacuum inside their trailer. Yep. And that seems really useful. So we're actually pondering going that route.
We just bought, well, not just, now it's been quite a few months. We bought the latest one that they have. We had the previous one, and it was it was pretty lousy.
Yeah, it wasn't
This new one is really good. So they've definitely improved it.
Good to know, because I am in the market. I'll check it out.
We like it, and then there's all kinds of lanterns. What started this addiction was lanterns. And now we have lanterns, drills. We have the inflator. We have blowers. Blower, I use a blower to blow off the top of the slide. I mean, it's funny how
we're like a walking Ryobi commercial. A driving way Ryobi
Our latest
commercial.
thing is these little Bluetooth speakers that can be linked, and you can link up to 100 of them.
I've got some of those.
Once you've got the addiction, which is the battery, right? Then it's like I keep getting the email. Ooh, look what Ryobi has now, and I don't need that. But I want it.
Okay, maybe I shouldn't get the Ryobi vacuum. It sounds like it's the beginning of a slippery slope.
It's the beginning, yeah.
It's a slippery slope.
Oh my God.
In fact, for some reason, you've got a battery right here on your desk. Like,
wow, you don't go anywhere without that thing.
Just happens to be sitting there. I don't know why.
There's one in the bathroom too.
Probably.
Oh, probably.
Yeah. Oh, man. Well, Rich, it's always good to see you. And this is really some good information for people to know. And we'll put a link, as always, to where they can buy their own Air Gear tire changing kit and the tire pressure monitor system.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I always enjoy chatting with you guys. I look forward to the next time.
As do we.
We do, too.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. All right. Have you got on airgear.store and done your shopping?
Oh, my gosh.
We'll wait.
Yeah.
Ready? Okay. So last week, and I said this before, we stayed at Harvest Hosts, and this week we're going to stay at a Harvest Host, and probably the following week on the way to a rally, we're going to stay at a Harvest Host. Usually we use Harvest Host for overnights on our way to somewhere.
Yeah,
right?
That's typically what we do.
Yeah, it's a way of just having a safe place to sleep overnight when we're on our way to another destination. This week, though, there's actually a brewery that's not too far from our home, and our friends have been asking us for like a year when we can get together and just hang out and go to this brewery. So that is happening this week.
Yeah, and that's the thing with these Harvest Host days. They are very experiential. So museums, destinations, they have over 5,000 hosts now of all different types. So obviously we go to breweries a lot, but you can go to museums or cultural places or farms, drive-in movie theaters now.
I want to find those.
All kinds of stuff. So if you're interested in kind of upping your adventure and finding all these unique places, of course, Harvest Host is a great place to do so. And we do have a discount. So check it out. We also have an interview with them and more information at our home on the web at StressLessCamping.com.
So one of the places that we stayed last week on our way home from Indiana was Tucumcari, New Mexico. Now, we've passed through there several times, of course. It's a little close to home for making an overnight stop, but we couldn't make it all the way home. So that was where we stopped last week on the way home. And I think our first time through there was in 2021 when we did our Route 66 trip. And I think we saw this week like revitalization projects going on and new murals and Route 66 stuff. And I think it's time for Tucumcari.
Yeah, it's clear that, for example, we ate at a little diner. What was it called? I don't remember now.
It was called Kicks.
That's
with an
right.
X.
Kicks on Route 66.
Kicks on 66. And they serve pancakes, just in case you're in the mood for pancakes. We didn't have those.
But it was a completely sort of revitalized 50s diner.
Yeah.
Right? And you could really tell somebody took a lot of care in putting this place back together. The KOA that we stayed at was recently bought by a new couple, and now they had, you could have breakfast delivered right to your RV.
Yes. So we thought about doing that. The reason we didn't, this is going to be so typical us, it was windy and chilly outside, and we would have had to walk back to the office with our order form, and we didn't want to go outside. So we did not have breakfast delivered, but it was like a pancake breakfast that you could have delivered. We did end up going to Kicks on 66, and that was fantastic breakfast as well. We didn't have pancakes, but anyway, but the next time we go, I realized that for the past 3 years, I got two locations mixed up. And we stayed at a campground in Shamrock, Texas, that I thought was the Blazing Saddles. And it wasn't. Blazing Saddles is actually in Tucumcari, and we loved that place because we got to walk in, and the owner fully embraces the Blazing Saddles movie.
Yeah.
And all the movie quotes and all the fun. It was really, really fun. So I guess next time we visit Tucumcari, we're going to have to really pick whether we go for pancake breakfast or silly movie references.
Well, and the point is there seems to be, and of course, if you go without an RV, the Blue Swallow Motel is legendary on Route 66 for its exceptional neon. But
and there are a few hotels that are like that. And in fact, right next door to Kicks on 66, there was an old hotel that was, I don't know what it was called because the sign was laying on the ground and covered with a tarp because it had blown over. But the building was being rebuilt. And so next time we go to Kicks on 66, there might be a hotel next door. Yeah,
well, there is now, but they were working on the sign and all. So again, Tucumcari seems to be undergoing a revitalization. Know that next year, 2026, is the 100-year anniversary.
Wait, next year isn't 2026.
I'm sorry. 2026 is the 100-year anniversary of Route 66.
We're getting
so there's
there.
A lot of stuff that will be happening along the route.
And if you like to celebrate 99s, that's next year.
That's next year.
Well, while we were at the RV Miles homecoming in Iowa, we got raffle tickets for
of course
participating and stuff, and we actually won tire covers.
Yeah.
So we have always wondered, should we have tire covers, and do we want tire covers, and will we use tire covers? Well, now we're going to find out because we actually won some. So we're kind of excited to check those out. They seem like they're just super easy. Just unfold them and slip them over the top of the tire. maybe we'll get around to some pictures of that before this episode comes out.
I don't think so, but potentially. You never know.
Eventually.
Yeah.
And we are looking forward to having those. Now, the trick is to sit long enough to actually cover the tires, because I'm not doing it every time we stop for one night.
No. So, well, another thing this week, when we went to Indiana in September, we got to go on a tour of the Aluminum Trailer Company, or ATC. And so, very briefly, we have a video this week and story about that factory tour. So if you've been curious, like, ooh, how do they make RVs? We have a number of those factory tour videos, but this ATC factory tour is our newest, and it's called the Aluminum Trailer Company because they make their trailers completely out of welded aluminum. It's kind of cool.
Cool.
So if you're curious about that, check out our video. For all of the things we mentioned, there are links in the show notes. If you're listening on the audio podcast, there's a link to a page on our website, and that's where those links are. If you're watching on YouTube, there is a link down below to that page, and that page will have all the things that we talk about and the links and all that. So it's all in one place, nice and easy, breezy, lemon peasy.
Well, Rich talked to us a lot about tire changing kit and TPMS, but as a kind of a maintenance reminder, we want to make sure you also remember to, grease your bearings and maintain your wheels and tires and bearings and axles and all those parts that make the wheels turn. Lippert actually has a blog, How to Grease a Trailer Axle, and we will put a link to that in the show notes so that you can check it out. Maybe you just are the kind of person who's not a DIY and you're just going to take it somewhere and have them do it.
Which isn't a bad thing.
That's all good.
Take it and have the axle bearings greased. If you're towing, if you're driving, then it might be a different maintenance schedule. Right. But if you're towing, you should have these bearings greased periodically. And of course, there will be instructions from the manufacturer on how frequently, but we like to do about once a year. We take it to a place that they pull the whole tire off and look at the brakes. So they pull the brake drum off. They look at how the brakes are performing and whether they're wearing excessively, and also repack the axle bearings on the trailer. So it's the lazy way to do it, but...
So maybe you want to do it right now as you're winterizing so you don't have to worry about it in the spring.
Winterizing.
I know. Maybe you want to do it right when you're opening things back up next spring to start your trip.
Probably better to do it now.
Better to do it now so
because
it's not
then it's just
dirty.
done.
Yeah.
There's no barrier to getting you on the road as soon as you want to. Maybe even in wintertime.
Yeah. Well, next week, just to kind of keep you updated on our ridiculous amount of travel lately, we will be in Sonoyta, Arizona. I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. We will be at Romp It Up, which is a music festival hosted by our friends from the Porter Hookups.
Yeah.
Dave and Jacqueline put together this whole rally, and so we are going there. We'll be boondocking, so we'll be using our ABC system. We're going to have some great music, and we have a couple different couples of friends that we haven't seen in a while that we know are going to be there. So we'll get to meet up with them, which is fantastic. And then just a little reminder that next Thursday is Halloween. So start preparing yourself now to listen to the Halloween episode. Those three of you who listen, that is.
Yep. Well, as always, we have our question of the week on our fun and friendly Facebook group, the StressLess Camping Facebook group.
Yep. And so last week I asked you to share your funniest camp stories. Now, I think you're all still trying to decide which one is the best because only a couple people have responded. So I won't recap those stories, but I will encourage you to go and check out those stories on our Fun and Friendly Stressless Campers Facebook group. And this week, maybe when you're in there writing your funny story, you'll also answer this week's question, which is, please share your spookiest camp story.
Absolutely. And you can answer that question or ask your own at our Fun and Friendly Stressless Campers Facebook group. which is you can get to on Facebook, or there's links right on our webpage there where you can go right to it.
While you're on our webpage, you can sign up for our once-a-week free newsletter. It has links to stories and videos and podcasts and whatever we find that we think will help you get the most of your RV experience.
Yep, just visit our website and you can sign up at the bottom of any page, or a lot of the pages just have a sign-up form. Know that we only send one email per week. That's it, and we never share your information with anybody.
Absolutely.
That would not be Stressless Camping.
Also on the website, you can find the show notes for this episode, which is number 278 on the podcast page.
Wow, it's stresslesscamping.com. That's a lot of podcasts. We have not missed one yet.
We have not missed one yet.
Of course, that's also where you'll find our discounts and deals for the best deals on the things you'll need on your Stressless Camping adventure.
And if you know of a deal that we don't already have, please reach out. Let us know. We want all the best things for all of you.
Of course, we're also in all the social places, and you can start at stresslesscamping.com, and from there jump off to all the places where you like to waste time. Oh, be social.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
If you don't want to miss a future episode of the Stressless Camping Podcast,
it's free.
It is free to subscribe on any podcast catcher, and we are saving you a seat around our virtual campfire.
And don't forget to like and comment and a review, of course, of this podcast on wherever you're listening to podcasts. Really does help tell those podcasts? It really does tell those podcast providers that people are listening and enjoy us, and that means they recommend us to more people, which is kind of a cool deal. So it's free to do, means the world to us, so thank you in advance.
Something else that means the world to us is when you share something that we say or do or make a video about or write that you think other people would like to hear as well. So if you see something like that, please hit the share button on Facebook, hit the share button wherever, or if you're not really sure how to get something off our website and share it in your social places, we have instructions for that on the website too.
That's right. Well, with all of that, we really appreciate your back. Your back? And we appreciate your front too, your top and your bottom. Wait a minute.
We appreciate that you're back.
Yeah, we appreciate that you're back here with us again this week. Hopefully you've had a great week. Maybe you have some great fall camping plans.
Yeah.
Maybe you have Halloween plans. But whatever it is, we really appreciate you, and Stressless Camping.